Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and we are sitting down to talk about S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. This one's been a long time coming, and for long-time Matty viewers, you know that back to the Fallout 4 days, S.T.A.L.K.E.R has been recommended to yours truly, and I've been holding out for that S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. But before we get into anything else, I think full stop GSC Game World deserves praise for releasing this game in the conditions that they were working under. There were trailers they released like War Games, which really depicted the harrowing environment in which this game was made, but that strife actually stretches back as far as 2012. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is the first game in the series since Call of Pripyat, and that was 15 years ago. It was originally announced to be releasing in 2012 until developer GSC Game World dissolved following numerous layoffs and conflict among the team. The gang then got back together in 2014 to make Cossacks 3, which came out in 2016. Then, come 2018, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 was pre-announced in an effort to strike a publishing deal at that year's E3, and it appears that partner was Xbox as the game was shown to the world on its stage in 2021 with an April 28th, 2022 release date. Many people have said, Matty, this would be your type of game thanks to its first-person exploration and atmospheric open world. And it has understandably seen multiple delays since, and even with that whole trilogy that came out for S.T.A.L.K.E.R with all the older games, I still held out for S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 to be my first S.T.A.L.K.E.R experience. I've sunk just over 15 hours into S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 and am by no means done, but wanted to just give some thoughts with the embargo lifting before our final verdict video, provided I have more things to say about the game by the time I've actually completed it. But first, a word from today's sponsor. The following video is brought to you by Factor. It's the holiday season, and that means it's time for good eats and healthy eats. You don't have to make one choice or the other if you're shopping with Factor, which takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success where you're skipping the grocery stores, the prep work, the cooking fatigue, and just focusing on fresh, never frozen meals that are restaurant quality, chef crafted, dietitian approved, and ready in just 2 minutes. This week I got a new one. It's the pesto bacon and tomato chicken bake. I saw it immediately in the box they sent me. I was like, oh my word, this sounds delicious. As a pesto aficionado, I had to try it out. And as expected, Factor absolutely delivered. So I'm eating food that tastes good, is good for me, and on top of all of that, it's cut down a lot of my time in the busy holiday season where I'm prepping a lot of videos and podcasts in advance to get a couple of weeks off in December. So Factor is always looking out for me, and they're looking out for you too. Head to factor75.com/MrMattyPlays and use code 50MattyPlays to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50MattyPlays at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, what I would say to open things up, is very much in line with a lot of the things I've heard, read, and watched about this game. By that, I mean that it has its great moment-to-moment exploration that scratched that itch I've really had since Starfield, where I'm wandering into random buildings full of exciting loot that's fueled by its tense open world. When I found armor that made me more resistant to physical damage, I didn't really think much of it. Then, the firefight after I looted that was considerably easier because I didn't get dropped the moment bullets started flying like I typically did. It's then that S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 kind of clicked into place with that subtle aha moment where it wasn't about my level or some perk. It was just an object I found in the world that I worked for, and it felt good to have at that point in time. Before finding that armor, I engaged in a massive firefight amidst a bunch of wrecked vehicles and muttered to myself that I hope this is all worth it because I died a few times to get in there in the first place. And I think that sort of experience of atmosphere and exploring and just rewarding loot is really what defines S.T.A.L.K.E.R. At the same time, what also defines S.T.A.L.K.E.R is kind of what, again, we're going to compare it to Bethesda Game Studios, a little bit of that jank. Unfortunately, though, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is riddled with bugs, and some are innocent distractions that I think most fans in the series will happily get over. Others, like combat AI, who immediately lob grenades at your feet at the start of every single fight, no exaggeration, or just run at you without so much as a thought, do bog down the experience. Now, performance on my PC with a 3080, an 8-core processor, and 32 gigabytes of RAM ran the game perfectly fine at medium settings at 1440p, with the only graphical hitches being texture flickering, which I can get over. However, higher modes will tank your performance. GSC Game World is working on a massive day one patch, so it's possible that even at the time of you seeing this, this may have already been addressed. That said, just for the sake of being thorough, I want you to be aware of this. This is a Game Pass game after all, so before we really get into the thick of everything this game offers, good and bad, It's an easy download to go ahead and check out for yourself if you're really that curious. I will say on PC, particularly in towns, when you max things out, you can dip as low as into the 30s, and that's with the drivers installed. However, I do think that much of this will be swept under the rug as classic Stalker jank, but I sincerely think this game will benefit you most if you give the team the time they need to patch some things up and see how others are experiencing it as always. The story also isn't very good, and I know many in the past have claimed that's not what Stalker is about, but a lot of the work has gone into the production quality and focus of said storytelling, where it's difficult just to hand wave away, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. All in all, if you're just asking me too long didn't read how you're feeling about Stalker 2, it's a good time. I really enjoy exploring its open world. I love the hardcore elements of it. There's a lot of unique properties within the world of Stalker that have really drawn my love, where I can overlook some of this stuff, but I do think it could be better in some ways on a technical level, and if that were the case, then I think some of the story woes would be a little more tolerable. But again, I know that many Stalker fans don't look to this series for, you know, incredible character development and plots that are going to blow your mind. To open things up more so, I think the steady progression of weaponry in Stalker 2 really is the name of the game. Like, you start off with some decent weapons, or at least you think so. Like, okay, I got a double barrel, and that's really effective for enemies up close, but once I waste those 2 shots, it's not like a Call of Duty where I'm sprint diving and reloading at the same time. I need to make those 2 shots count. And you can die quickly, especially in the early game in Stalker 2. But then by the mid game, I found a pump action, and this thing had more range. Of course, as a pump action, it had more shots available for me, and it just suddenly felt like I was way more powerful in fights because I had way more at my disposal. Still the power of that double barrel, but more shots to blow. Plus, I had better armor, so I could get more aggressive with it. Or you start off with an SMG. Yeah, this will get the job done, but when it comes to anything longer range, or if I'm not headshotting them, this thing's pretty weak. Then I find a scoped assault rifle, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Picking off enemies from a distance, carefully headshotting them more often, saving ammo because of that. It's all great stuff, but that steady progression is really what makes things click for Stalker, because beyond that, there will be an upgrade system where you can do things like reduce the recoil, reduce the weight, you can change the bullet spread, add the ability to pierce armor, and much more. Plus, you can adjust your armor as well, so you can invest in that. You'll invest in it with coupons, which are earned through completing just random side quests. And these also aren't going to be super amazing. It's usually like, go here and collect someone's money, and usually the story will present a choice to you, like kill this person or help this person out. And maybe if you help someone out, then that story will progress into the next phase where it'll unlock a separate side quest line. So there is some real choice and consequence here that I think mechanically just keeps things interesting and kind of kept driving me forward, where I was just happy to get more ammo, more money, and be able to spend that on more attachments and more armor. And again, I loved it because it wasn't immediately available to me. It wasn't readily available. That power curve is really good in this game. But also, it should be mentioned that Stalker 2 is not a run and gun shooter. It's slow, it's tactical. Your weapon doesn't ready immediately in front of your face. You're going to be crouch walking a lot as enemies patrol a nearby area. But enemies don't play by the same rules as you, at least currently. Like I mentioned earlier, they will lob grenades at you instantly, and it's very frustrating because you'll just hear ding, 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 and boom, all of a sudden, you're dead on the floor because you don't even get like an alert that a grenade is nearby, which I can live with because it kind of clashes with some of the game's more hardcore elements, but it's also a game that's not afraid to give you like direction on where to go. So there's more handholdy elements in this game still. So I don't know. It's a little weird there, but yeah, I don't like that the instant reaction for any enemy that sees me is to throw a single grenade at me. They need to tone that down. At the same time, you can also get shot in the complete dark, and this is something that is really tough even now in the mid game, and I'm imagining that eventually I'll get some sort of like night vision or night scope that'll change things, but boy do I feel vulnerable when it gets dark out. So much so that I make way for the nearest bed and sleep until it's light out. The amount of times I got dropped in the dark, I would just be blind firing, hoping I'm hitting something, or just tossing a grenade out there. It's realistic, and I know there's a lot of people, especially because as someone who's created a lot of Fallout content, there's mods like Realistic Darkness. Some people are going to eat this up. So it makes sense. It's just not always excellent to play. What I do really like, though, is the weather. The weather plays a massive factor in this world, as storms will literally tear in, and you'll see it in real time moving toward you, and lightning will strike right next to you. And just like in Call of Pripyat, you'll have these emissions that force you to take shelter, or else you're going to die. Now, what's interesting and kind of strange is that only certain buildings will allow you to take shelter. If you go into basically an unmarked building, then you're dead. And so I don't know why it works that way, but it does. So in turn, what you're starting to realize here is a pattern of you're going to die a lot. But that was okay for me because I was learning the ropes as a new Stalker player. And I think for those who are Stalker vets, this is going to be par for the course. I mean, it's practically screaming in your face whenever you die. There is a death counter. And as of this point in time, I'm at 30, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but I will say I'm dying less. I'm seeing that screen way less often now. But as you're exploring this world, you're also going to have to take care of your character. You're going to have to eat, drink, manage your rads, just like you would in Fallout, as well as your carry weight as you go along. There is equipment durability, but I found it pretty fair with guns only jamming after excessive use. And I love the detail on it, as you'd have to like really, you'd see like the bullet kind of sideways inside the chamber. You'd have to like shove it out. And that would be that sort of Far Cry 2 level of intensity where the realism kicks in a little bit and you were ready to pop someone in the head. But when you shoot all yours, like click, click, you're like, why isn't it shooting? And oh my God, he sees me now. I had a couple of those moments and it was really fun and really hectic. So I like the lengths they go to for realism here. And that's because the world itself is fascinating in S.T.A.L.K.E.R. While feeling post-apocalyptic thanks to its lawlessness and destruction abound, there's a hint of phenomena in the anomalies that hold artifacts attributed to the Chernobyl disaster that left this place in the state you currently find it in. You'll also be able to trip these anomalies with bolts that you get. Keep in mind these are unlimited, so throw them away as often as you want before you make a mad dash through these anomalies safely. Within some of these are going to be artifacts, and these artifacts can be home to precious upgrades, many of them with trade-offs like, oh, you're going to be more resistant to lightning damage, but you're going to gradually gain radiation. And I want to make sure that's clear for new players because there was a point that I was running around in a new zone. I kept getting rads. I'm like, man, they really made this area tough by adding rads to it. And I was going through vodka and anti-rad medicine only to learn that it was actually the artifact that I had equipped that was giving me rads. The second I unequipped it, things got much easier for me. This world does have other interesting things to find beyond those anomalies, like the big poppy field. This is really cool because if you spent too long in it, you'd actually risk passing out unless you sip on an energy drink. And it did give purpose to the loot I had otherwise not used. Unfortunately, as of this point in the game, I haven't found anything quite like the big poppy field yet again, but I'm trying to do as much of the side content as I find because I just kind of enjoy roaming the world. And as far as I know, there's no fast travel, so you kind of want to plan your excursions and make sure that you are good to go when you leave the base. You have all of your water, all of your med kits, you have enough ammo, you've stored enough away so you're not encumbered constantly. Because yeah, eventually you got to part with some things that you may not have wanted to part with at the end of the day. And so that management is a big part of this game. And if I haven't really overstated it here, yeah, this game is very Fallout coded like many of you did recommend to me. There's a trickling sound of radiation as you acquire new quests. The eyes of characters speaking to me are darting around, and there's a close zoom even, which brought me straight back to 2008 or 2010 respectively. I only wish I liked what the characters were saying more, but more on that in a second. It also reminds me of Fallout in its dependency on technology and science to explain the weird things that you see rather than just magic, but at the same time, there are these just weird, crazy things happening, like Fallout has aliens, and this world has invisible creatures that'll appear out of nowhere and charge you down, and you'll just be like wandering along like la-di-da-di-da, oh my God, and pull out the shotgun and just start fighting for your life out of nowhere. This game will surprise you, and sometimes I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if it's the game breaking, but there'll be like dogs chasing me out of nowhere, and it'll be a massive pack of them. I'm like, okay, 1, 2, okay, there's 7 over there, okay, there's another 8 over there, and suddenly I'm going through all of my resources, and it's like, do I fight or flight here? And so yeah, the moment to moment is really great here, but it did remind me a lot of Fallout while still being very different, which I need to emphasize because I know Stalker fans are going to be like, bro, stop it. It's not Fallout. I'm not saying it is. It just reminds me a lot of it. And I do think GSC Game World leaned into the Fallout sensibilities a little bit more here. So the last leg of the conversation I wanted to have here was the story. You play as Skiff, who ends up having an anomaly hit his apartment at the start of the game, which leaves behind a dummy artifact that can be recharged by a companion's gadget. And so you have to head into the zone to do that. And if you succeed, it means a big payday. The trick, though, is that this game does not tell you this backstory. I actually found this by reading a note in the protagonist's journal, which then described what was actually happening in the opening cutscene. And trust me, if you did not read this, you'd actually be muddy confused without it. It is the only time the game thus far has relied on a note to address a clearly missing cutscene, but it's still worthy of getting the heads up on in case there are other instances of that you should be on the lookout for. Anyway, you'll end up getting worked over, and a lot of your journey is spent trying to find who screwed you over and why. The English VA isn't great. I switched it on over and thought the performance was much better. I think the first-person cutscenes look really good. It reminds me a little bit of Far Cry, where there are moments you feel like you can see the cameraman on the set as you're kind of awkwardly moving around in a way that doesn't feel human and getting really close to people in a way that doesn't feel human. For example, in this cutscene here, your character is looking between the two characters speaking, which says to me it's a cameraman and not a person looking at the talking character. Just a minor thing here, but it's just something that always stands out like a sore thumb to me in these first-person games. I always look at Cyberpunk as a way they get it right. There are moments this game gets it right too, where talking to characters, they'll kind of Skyrim you and reach out to you from a distance, and it'll be a little more immersive. I look for that sort of stuff in first-person cutscenes. It's not awful. You may not care about it, but again, I just felt worth addressing. I think the most interesting thing about the storytelling in this game is the choices you can make. You can tell someone to pay up. You can pay them for information. There's times that you can just show them an item and get the answer you're looking for. But will that work you over later? There's times you can just kill people, and you kind of just have liberty to kill whoever you really want as you progress through this world. And I also think that's really great. Like, side quests just have these moments where they branch, and it's not like I go, oh my God, that story was amazing, but I get to tell the story of how I went about one of those side quests, and I think that goes a really long way for gamers. So to kind of put a bow on it, I definitely enjoy a lot of my time with it. If you can tolerate the Bethesda Game Studios coded experience of like, hey, this is janky, but I kind of enjoy the jank, then I'm right there with you. I totally get it. But with that comes a very big asterisk. This game is super buggy. It does have a lot of problems, and I think a lot of them are distracting from the game's best qualities, whether it be the combat and the looting and the exploration, or even sometimes trying to tell that good story that maybe you connect with more than me. And because of that, I do want to tell you to, of course, as always, please go out and watch other reviews. I do not own the review market, so please get other people's opinions on it, but see how their experiences are faring. See if I'm a one-off. Maybe I just had bad tech issues here on PC. Maybe the console version fares better. Do your research as always, and if it looks like the coast is clear or it's tolerable enough, check it out. I definitely think there's a lot to enjoy here, and I'm happy to be able to at least say that with everything this team has gone through, that you should at least check it out. It's a great Game Pass download. As for the buying it at full price, that's a bit of a tougher sell for me right now, just given the amount of bugs here. I do hope they straighten it out. Keep an eye on patches, but when this thing does get ironed out, if you are wondering, should I play it then? Absolutely. I think there is something really fun about this world, and it's made me want to go back and play the other Stalker games and see what's going on there. To be fair, I don't know how this stacks up against those older Stalker games. That is the one gap in my coverage here. Again, I encourage you to go seek out the hardcore Stalker fans and see how they're dealing with it. But for me, as a new-time Stalker fan, maybe ignorance is bliss. I'm enjoying what's here, though, and I'm curious to get your thoughts. Will you be checking it out? Let me know down below. Other than that, I'll catch all of you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.